Heading via Zoom to Queensland to catch up with a Professor of Nutrition and Dietetics. Her name is Dr. Liz Eisenring, and you can see all the branding there, on the Gold Coast in fact. How are you, Liz?
I'm wonderful, thanks George. Pleasure to be here.
Now, one of the things you and I have promised to talk about today is gut health, because everywhere I turn, we have friends of ours, we have people we know who are struggling. They're struggling because they're feeling bloated, they're struggling because they're not sleeping well, they're also waking up and they feel like they've had 8 hours sleep, but they're exhausted. And it all comes down to gut health, doesn't it?
It is, and we're only sort of fully appreciating this. So this is why it's all the buzz at the moment, because as the science evolves, we realise gut health, and particularly it's our bacteria and the sort of components that they make, that are so important, not just locally within the gut. And as you said, bloating, otherwise people experience nausea, constipation, diarrhea. But because we know that the gut also talks to our brain and sends signals. And so that's why people can have good sleep, but still feel really fatigued, low in energy, low in mood. And of course, at this time, a lot of people are experiencing anxiety, stress, frustration, and food cravings.
I was going to say the gut's almost described as the second brain at times, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It is really fascinating. And I think, you know, the way that we have evolved is that, 70% of our immune tissue is actually located around the gut, because just like our skin is constantly battling the elements, so actually is our gut when you think about it, because it is actually exposed, from the food that we bring in and the air that we breathe in. So it's very important. As I like to say, we should be tending our back garden, which means that we actually need to look after our good bacteria and everything that is happening within our gut.
Now, Liz, you live on the Gold Coast. There are many high-rise buildings there. There isn't a chance for the backyard. So what are we doing? Do we have to go to the absolute rooftop of these high-rise buildings for a communal garden?
Well, that's actually a great idea. I like the idea that we have to sort of go back to that. And even if it's just simply growing herbs, and now with hydroponics, we can do them in a garden sill. But I think the ideal situation is get to know our local farmers. Now, I know that's not going to be feasible for everyone, but a lot of people do have access to good farmers markets. And I think if you can't grow a little bit yourself, then farmers markets is probably, another fantastic option. But I am a realist. I know that for a lot of people, that's just not possible. So then we've got to talk about healthier options that are available either online or through our supermarkets.
Now, we have a number of great markets around the country, around Australia. But we're seeing more and more of these markets, these farmers markets crop up every second or third week, where the country seems to come to the city to try and give them access to the best and freshest produce. Now, when I was part of the 10 network, I can remember speaking to George Columbaris, and we also catch up with Shane Delia, who's a friend, and there is no secret. The reason why they've been such great chefs and so successful is because they've always been able to source the freshest and best produce. So if the very best people go that hard and go that far to get the freshest product, why aren't we doing it more? And it comes back to time poor, and of course we haven't built, as they say, those networks where we know where to go and who to speak to.
I think that's exactly right. I have seen some really amazing innovations coming up, though, that even if you can't get to farmers markets, a lot of delivering the farmers markets are coming to you in terms of boxes of fruit and veggies. And what I love is that it's seasonal and it varies from week to week. So it keeps us on our toes in terms of what sort of things that we can be making that week. But once again, it involves a bit of organisation. Price, although I'd argue it's coming straight from the farmers, it's actually very competitive with supermarket prices, but also people having the time and the knowledge of what to do with those fruit and veggies.
Dr. Liz Eisenring, what advice do you have? We're seeing an explosion of a bundle of new companies and players who suddenly on the market are unleashing all these wonderful foods that have been pre-cooked, pre-packaged and ready for you, especially now that you're time poor and struggling to cope with so many other things, including COVID. How good are they? How healthy are they? And what sort of regulations have been placed on them to actually deliver what they're saying is in the box?
Great point. So I think obviously it all depends on the different brand and the different products that they're offering. So there is a huge variety. I'd start off with the good bits. There are some good bits. I think one in particular is portion control. And as long as they're not super crazy, but if they're, most of them are, because they are also promoting, some are promoting weight loss. Mm-hmm. So the portions are reasonable. And for those who have been, you know, getting bigger and bigger serve sizes, particularly over COVID, just getting to get an idea of what is a healthy serve size can be really valuable. But I do have real concerns about the processed nature, particularly those that have a lot of sauces or different additives. We're getting a lot of salt and often a lot of fat and maybe even sugar without realizing it. So in terms of regulations, yes, there's quite a lot in terms of food safety and hygiene. In terms of the nutrition, not so much, other than that it's labelled. So once again, it comes back to the consumer to be a little bit aware, to actually compare different labels, and they're huge. I've had a look myself. Some are actually really quite good options. Others, you know, in terms of calories, could be the same as eating, you know, junk food and a hamburger. Not that I'm recommending that, but, you know, people might be thinking they're healthy and getting a chicken Caesar salad or, you know, another sort of meat and veg dish without realising that it's full of fat, full of salt, full of calories.
That's super rich mayonnaise.
It'll do it every time. It'll do it every time.
Now, okay, before we wrap this up, so again, looking at keeping ourselves as healthy as possible, for good gut health, what are the things, the important things that we need to remember each and every week?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's all based on our good, healthy gut bacteria. So we need to feed that appropriately. And our bacteria loves nothing better than fibres, which are found in our natural foods like vegetables, fruit, chickpeas, whole grains. So they need good fibres. For the fibres to work properly in our gut, we need good hydration, so plenty of water. It's also good to have some anti-inflammatories, so things like spices, turmeric, ginger are amazing. And also focusing perhaps on some fermented or probiotic food. So these are things like our yogurts or our pickled vegetables. Whoever thought that sauerkraut would become in vogue again? So focusing on all those sorts of less processed foods, because you have to remember our poor gut bacteria, these are more recent man-made inventions. You know, we haven't evolved to we've evolved probably to love chicken nuggets and hamburgers, but our gut bacteria certainly have not. They certainly have not. So we want to really make sure we're encouraging the growth of our healthy, beneficial bacteria and discourage the growth of some of those not so good bacteria, which can lead to problems with increased stress, poor sleeping and low energy levels.
Liz Eisenring, you remind us yet again that what is old can be good for us. And, you know, you're bringing it up and showing us that the practices of the past were well-intentioned from the very beginning. It's just we who have forgotten some of those things that grandma, grandpa, and I can remember my uncle, one of my granduncles, in fact, who lived almost to his 90s, he used to sit there and cook his vegetables, yeah? And then, of course, his wife would make sure she'd have a steak or she'd put some meat on the platter for them. But he was constantly in his back garden, and it would be you know, grass or horta, as the Greeks would say, and all manner of carrots and things that he would grow. And I used to smile and look at him, and now I understand why he was so healthy for so long.
Absolutely right. And we look at, like, in the blue zones, those areas around the world where there are so many people that live a healthy life and to a long age.
Yeah, and a simple life.
Exactly right.
A simple life. Yeah.
And enjoyable. And they still get to enjoy foods. It's still very social. So I think the more that we can sort of take, and I'm realistic, like, you know, we can't do that perhaps all the time, but let's bring elements back and use convenience, like, you know, chopped up veggies or chopped up salad if you can't make it at home, and bulk out your convenience foods with some actual real food.
And the supermarkets are meeting you halfway. They're now introduced a range of salads and others that 10 years ago, 20 years ago, they weren't offering.
Absolutely. Could you imagine even, going in and getting your celery sticks and your carrot sticks already chopped
Processed,
up?
yeah,
Like
yeah,
that's,
yeah.
yes, that's, I mean, how lazy are we? We can't actually chop up celery anymore. However, it's a great healthy snack. It's there, it's as easy and as cheap to get as opposed to going to a hamburger or something. So I think we do need to be aware of those and get the better choices. As we mentioned before about the salad dressings, just take it easy with the salad dressings. Enjoy the salads. You can have a bit of salad dressing, but you don't need to consume the great big huge pack of mayonnaise that they give you.
Each and every week we reach out to our health professional, Liz Eisenring, and she comes up with the best possible advice, and she's done it yet again. Thank you, Liz. All the very best for joining us on The Informer.